All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the artists of the great millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today, I just want to do, a quick video on, the bombing that took place on May 13th, 1985, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the MOVE bombings, and pretty much, an entire neighborhood was burned down because the Philadelphia Police Department, bombed, some houses where some of our people were, So I'm just going to play this clip, The clip that I'm going to feature is being used for fair use purposes, for fair use and educational purposes only. I'm not making any money off of this. This is being used for educational purposes only. So fair use, fair use, fair use. I'm going to play this clip and then go into an article, and then we got a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And I'm going to entitle this 40 Years Later. Let's get into it.
It was 40 years ago that the unthinkable happened here, 6221 Osage Avenue. A bomb was dropped from a helicopter on this building, starting a fire that devastated 61 row homes, killing 11 people.
When I come here, I just get chills. I hear the gunfire, smell the tear gas. 40 years later, it's still there, man. It's just doesn't go away.
The neighbors of the Back to Nature group MOVE were fed up. Members were using loudspeakers 24 hours a day, brandishing firearms and making threats. Some members of the group had outstanding criminal warrants, and the city decided they didn't want the situation to become a repeat of the previous standoff with the group that ended with the death of a Philadelphia police officer.
We were put on standby that Friday that, the city was going to try to talk MOVE members out of 6221 Osage. One family said, yeah, he can come in, get video out the window. Police are all outside. They didn't know I was up on the second floor. And I just started videotaping.
The top floor of the MOVE compound was covered with a bunker made to remove any tactical advantage from police if they tried to gain entry to the property. Multiple attempts were made to remove the bunker on the fatal day by using fire department high-pressure water cannons. Then the decision was made to remove it by dropping an explosive device.
That was their target, not the home so much, but the bunker on top of the house.
Mark Ciccone, a decorated Vietnam combat pilot, was working as the pilot of a traffic spotting helicopter used by radio and TV stations, and he was called in to help support the effort.
We flew a recon mission, a high-speed, low and a high-speed mission over it, and I told them there's nothing in the bunker at all, just sandbags and a can of gas. I related to the policeman sitting next to me that the bunker posed no threat in my estimation. There was no one there. That wasn't an estimation, that was a fact. We stayed in the air till we were issued the order to go pick up the lieutenant and the bomb. We both landed. The lieutenant and the satchel charge went in the other helicopter. Then I took off just to be a high observer. I didn't see in my estimation, any reason to drop a tactical weapon on the roof to eliminate the bunker, which was their original target, since it consisted of nothing. So that's just my opinion, and I gave it to them.
The time in the home was tense for Pete Kane. He was hidden across the street, communicating with his station via wired telephone. He was the only unbiased report available because other reporters were kept blocks away from the confrontation.
They called it a bunker. I watched them hit that with water most of the day, knocking a piece of wood off, plastic off, went through tear gas, went through the bullets whizzing by, and then 5:27, the bomb was dropped. Out the window, I saw the flames. I was saying to myself, please come out the house. Please. I knew they were in there. I never heard anything that from the station that, hey, they came out, they're out. So in my mind, I knew people were still in 6221 Osage Avenue.
Kane was at a loss for words as 40 years later he looked at the site of the MOVE compound.
You see the black smoke coming out of 6221. I'm on the phone with Larry Kane. I'm saying, Larry, the MOVE house is on fire, fully engulfed in flames. And I said, the fire is spreading to homes on either side. Now keep in mind, all day long, I watched the fire department hit that house, that bunker with water. It was maybe 45 minutes after that fire started that water was put on that fire. And when I left that house 3 hours later, this whole south side of Osage was fully engulfed in flames. I just understand why, if you knew people were in there, even the kids were in there, that it could have been handled differently. I can understand the gunfire and things like that, but if you can hit that bunker all day long with that deluge gun, why not try to hit it more when that fire is burning? That's the thing that frustrates me more than anything else. I understand the firemen, lives being put in danger, but you're a quarter block away hitting it all day long. Why not hit it when that fire gets out of control? That's frustrating to me.
When Kane walked onto Osage Avenue, you could see him tensing up, even though the homes had been rebuilt and the street didn't resemble the scene in 1985.
It brings back nightmares. It's a day like today. 40 years ago don't seem like 40 years ago, Tom. It doesn't.
I'm Tom McDonald, WHYY News.
Yeah, man, as you can clearly see, how much this man hates us, but you have, 2/3 of our people that will go hard body for the nation of Edom, which is the so-called white man, that will go hard for them, not understanding that these people hate us. Now, what they did, was, they didn't have to use, explosive devices to get them out of there, because originally they were just trying to, evict them, but, it clearly turned into, more than just that. So let's go into the details of what exactly went on 40 years ago today. So it says the 1985 MOVE bombing. Says the 1985 MOVE bombing, locally known by its date, May 13th, 1985, was the aerial bombing and destruction of residential homes in the Cobbs Creek neighborhood of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States, by the Philadelphia Police Department during an armed standoff with MOVE, a black liberation organization, as Philadelphia police attempted to evict MOVE members from a house they were shot at. Philadelphia police aviators then dropped 2 explosive devices, satchel charges, from a Pennsylvania State Police helicopter onto the roof of the occupied house. For 90 minutes, the Philadelphia Police Department allowed the resulting fire to burn out of control, destroying 61 previously evacuated neighboring homes over 2 city blocks and leaving 250 people homeless. 6 adults and 5 children were killed in the attack, with 1 adult and 1 child surviving who were occupants of the home. A lawsuit in federal court found that the city used excessive force and violated constitutional protections against unreasonable search and seizure. And again, man, you have to remember that this is this man's system. They did use excessive force. They literally bombed, those houses. And look, it says, look what they used. So it says attack type, aerial bombing with C4. I said satchel charges, so Salakia, that's a correction. So weapons, Tovac C4, man. They dropped 2 C4s on those houses and allowed them to burn and destroy 61 homes, man. destroyed 2 city blocks. They did this just to get these, you know, those people out of that house, man. So they did use excessive force, man. That was unnecessary. But again, this is why we have to remember that this is not our home, man. You know, they did the same thing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know, they bombed, you know, they bombed that city, you know, Black Wall Street. So it's nothing new, man. It's nothing new. So the background, it says in 1981, Move relocated to a row house at 6221 Osage Avenue in the Cobbs Creek area of West Philadelphia. Neighbors complained to the city for years about trash around their building, confrontations with neighbors, and bullhorn announcements of political messages by Move members. The bullhorn was broken and inoperable for the 3 weeks prior to the police bombing of the row house. The police obtained arrest warrants in 1985, charging 4 Move occupants with crimes including parole violations, contempt of court, illegal possession of firearms, and making terroristic threats. Mayor Wilson Good and Police Commissioner Gregor J. Sambor classified Move as a terrorist organization. You know, doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like what they're getting ready to do to us in this time? They're going to label, you know, Hebrew Israelites as being this word right here. You know, a T or you know, a T organization. You know, where you have groups like the IUIC, you know, linking up with the Nation of Islam, man. And understanding that this is what they're going to label us all as, you know, these different quote unquote religious groups. You know, they're going to label us all as being this, you know. So it says residents were told that they would be able to return to their homes after a 24-hour period. Right, so the incident, I'm just going to go into this and then, well, I'm not going to read this. Well, I may, you know what I'm saying? So it says the incident, it says on Monday, May 13th, 1985, nearly 500 police officers, along with city manager Leo Brooks, arrived in force and attempted to clear the building and execute arrest warrants. Water and electricity were shut off in order to force Move members to move out of the house. At 5:35 a.m., Sambor read a long speech addressed to Move members that started with, "Attention Move, this is America. You have to abide by the laws of the United States." They were given 15 minutes to come out. When the Move members did not respond, the police decided to forcibly remove the people who remained in the house, including Slakia. Inside the building were 7 adults and 6 children. There was an armed standoff with police, who threw tear gas canisters at the building. The Move members fired at them, and a gunfight with semi-automatic and automatic weapons ensued for 90 minutes. One officer was hit in the back in his flak jacket but was not seriously injured. Police used more than 10,000 rounds of ammunition. At 2 p.m., Sambor ordered that the compound be bombed. So again, man, the mayor of Philadelphia at that time ordered those houses to be bombed, man. That is insane, you know. So, says from a Philadelphia State Police helicopter, Philadelphia Police Department Lieutenant Frank Powell proceeded to drop 2 1.5-pound bombs, which the police referred to as entry devices, made of Tovex, a dynamite substitute, combined with 2 pounds of FBI supplied C4, targeting a fortified bunker-like cubicle on the roof of the house. The bombs exploded after 45 seconds, igniting the fuel of a gasoline-powered generator and setting the house on fire. which was left to burn. Officials later stated that this was to let the fire burn through the house and to destroy the bunker. So police could then drop tear gas into the house and flush out the occupants. 30 minutes later, firefighters moved in to control the fire, but there was gunfire, and the firefighters and police were ordered back as the fire spread to neighboring houses down the street. The only two moved survivors, Bertie Africa, who was 13 at the time, and Ramona Africa, both escaped the house. Police initially said that two men had also run out of the house at the same time and fired at them, and that police had returned fire. Ramona Africa said that police fired at those trying to escape. Police said that members moved in and out of the house, shooting at the police. The fire department declared the fire under control at 11:47 p.m. The fire killed 11 of the people in the house, 6 adults and 5 children: John Africa, Rhonda Africa, Teresa Africa, Frank Africa, Conrad Africa, Tree Africa, Delisha Africa, Netta Africa, Littlefield Africa, Tommaso Africa, and Raymond Africa. 61 neighboring homes were destroyed by the fire, leaving 250 people homeless. So the aftermath, I'll leave this, in the description, because you clearly can, look up, videos of what happened, man. But, yeah, man. Now I have to do a little more research on the movement, but still, this just goes to show you that, again, anytime, so-called Negroes get together, to establish something, they don't like it. Now, initially, it says, look, from right here, it says, part of Black Power movement and political violence in the United States during the Cold War. So, this was during, Slovakia. But, the point I'm trying to make is that, again, anything that we do, they're going to try to infiltrate or destroy. Because, again, a prime example of that is, Black Wall Street, and any other, city or town where we were left to thrive. Take Lake Lanier, for instance. That was a so-called black town, where we were, doing good. And what did Esau do? He flooded it. That's why a lot of people, report, paranormal activity, around that lake, or they end up drowning. Something ends up happening. But again, man, that just goes to show you that they don't care, man. Again, and he was right. This is America, and in order to be here, we do have to abide by this man's laws, by his systems. Whatever little whatever little liberties we do have outside of this man's system, we can do, but still, for the most part, we still have to, abide by his rules. If you're getting evicted, just leave whatever, residence you're at, man, because otherwise, they're going to send, the sheriffs to come and get you out of there. Or if it turns into something more than that, then you clearly see, how they ended, man. It didn't end good. Says 6 adults and 5 children, they all died due to that fire, So I'm going to start with the book of Obadiah, chapter 1 and verse 10. It says, "For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever." And again, man, you clearly see that Esau, he has a perpetual hatred for Israel, man. And when I say Israel, I mean you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, man. the nation of Edom has a perpetual hatred for us, man. Ever since our forefather Jacob, supplanted Esau not once but twice, he was angry. Well, he sold his birthright, for pottage. And then he supplanted, Isaac, his father, because Isaac was blind, and Rebekah also helped Jacob, get a blessing from Isaac, because ultimately, the blessing of, the kingdom, eternal life, just happiness, man. Happiness, the kingdom, everything, man, immortality. It was going to go to Israel anyway. But, this is just how the Lord had to play out, But this man has a perpetual hatred for us, And again, like it's never ending. It's forever. So I'm going to jump to Genesis chapter 27. And I'll start at 39 or 38. I'll start at 38. This is Genesis 27 and 38. And Esau said unto his father, Hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above. So we clearly see that right now Esau, they have the best of everything. They stay in the best parts of town. They're able to, travel to, do everything. They have the best of everything right now, But meanwhile, who's at the bottom? Who stands in, the hood, the ghettos, these shanty towns, barrios, these favelas, man. Israelites, man. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, we're at the bottom, while he's living good. But what else? Verse 40, it says, And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So right, after King Solomon died, Edom, got from up under our control, got from under our control, and was able to, gain power, over a period of time, man. So he broke that yoke, and again, what does it say? By his sword shall he live. How did Esau come into power? By violence, man. That's his blessing. And this is the main point I wanted to get. Verse 41, And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, his mind, The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. So right, Isaac, he was up in age, and he was gonna die soon, But again, Esau always had that perpetual hatred for Jacob, man. And again, we're still seeing that today, and that was hatred. Dropping bombs on those houses. Now again, I'll have to rewatch, one documentary. It was on Vice. I'll leave that in the description as well, where I think it went into detail. Now, if I remember correctly, when I watched the documentary the first time, I think they said that no shots were initially fired at the police first. I forget. I could be wrong if I am, Salakia. But again, either way it goes, man, that they didn't have to do that. They did use excessive force, But again, anytime Esau gets a chance to use his sword, he's going to do it, So let me get Romans chapter 13 and verse 4. And it says, For he is the minister of Yahweh to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, Be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of Yahweh, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. So right, Esau is the Lord's whipping stick, against us, and what did it say? He beareth not the sword in vain, man. So again, anytime he gets to use his weaponry against us, he's going to do that, You've seen that recently. You had, another Jake get killed by the police, and what did, his father do? He took matters into his own hand, and went out and slew a police officer. No, now it wasn't, the officer that took out his son, but he just went out and took out an officer. So again, man, this just goes to show you this is all a build up, to all hell breaking loose. There's going to be race riots out here, man, because ultimately that's who is between. It's between Jacob and Esau, Israel versus the nation of Edom, man. He hates us. Like, what more proof do you niggas need that these people hate us? Now there's a such thing called black fatigue. Now they're tired of, you niggas. We been tired of you niggas, but they're the ones that, created nigga culture, but now they're tired of it, It's just fucking madness, man. It's straight madness. So I'm going to get the book of Micah chapter 2 and verse 10. And it says, Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you, even with the sword destruction. So right, man, we have to remember, this is not our rest. Now, all of those people, their last name was Africa. So, they may have been on some, some Kemet, stuff, or some type of something dealing with Africa. I'm pretty sure they didn't know they were Israelites, because otherwise, then they would have said that. But it just goes to show you, man, our people have a zeal, but not according to knowledge. No, it may have been, a Black Power movement, part of the Black Panthers. Either way it goes, man, Esau is going to infiltrate and, break things up, man. He doesn't want us to unify, which, again, the elect, they're going to unify. And even the wicked of our people, they're going to unify to come up against Esau, But the wicked of our people are going to be destroyed. And Edom is definitely going to be destroyed, So I'm going to get the book of Ezekiel chapter 35 and verse 5. And it says, Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity and the time that their iniquity had an end. And again, man, this man does not shy away from blood, man. He doesn't. He gets off on killing, And again, just like it says, he has a perpetual hatred for us, man. For all of the tribes, not just one, all of us. He hates all of us, especially Judah. He hates the tribe of Judah the most, man. And it goes to show you, they hate us. They hate all of us. Never forget that, Verse 6, Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord Yahweh, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Sith thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. So right, man, all of this blood that Esau has shed, he's going to have to pay for it, man. He's going to have to pay for it. The Lord is going to require that blood that he shed at his hands, man. So again, Esau is going to get, he's going to get got. When that time comes, obviously, we're not going to take matters into our own hands and try to come up against this man carnally, because again, we'll lose. We see how that's happened, how that worked out. It never ends well. And this is why we need our Lord Yahweh Shai to come back and deliver us from this man. He's too powerful for us, man. There's nothing carnally that we can do against this man. Nothing. This is why we're going to need divine intervention, So I'm going to jump to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. And I'm going to jump around in this chapter and verse 30. And it says, thou shalt betroth the wife, and another man shall lie with her. And thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt not plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof. And the point I want to make in this verse is that thou shalt build an house and shalt not dwell therein. Now, even if those particular homes weren't built by Israelites, still, you know, even if you pay a mortgage, we don't truly own anything here in America, man. We don't, you know. No, who knows if they were keeping up on bills? They were saying they were getting, you know, evicted. So 9 times out of 10 they weren't. But either way it goes, they said excessive. That wasn't excessive. That was extreme force, you know, to drop bombs on them when they could have just used the battering ram to go in and get them out if it came down to using force, man. But instead they bombed them, you know, and lives were lost due to that, you know. So I'm going to jump to verse 48. And it says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And right, man, this man has put us in slavery, you know, and he took the shackles off of us physically and put them on our minds, man, you know. And then you clearly still see that, you know, on our people today. They have these, you know, these shackles upon their mind, meaning they haven't waken up, you know. And even as it says in the scriptures that, you know, 2/3 of the nation of Israel are blinded, man, spiritually, you know, they can't see. Hence the reason why they're just out here lost, you know. But again, we have to come to this man in one of all things, man. And again, he owns everything. Remember Genesis 27, you know, in 39, he has the fatness of the earth. You know, this man is in rulership. So if he wants you out of a particular place, he's going to get you out of there one way or another. And, you know, they should have just left peacefully. But we clearly see how that ended, man, you know. So I'm going to jump to verse 65, Deuteronomy 28:65. And it says, and among these nations shalt thou find no ease, meaning, again, we're not going to have any rest, no ease, you know, wherever we're scattered dealing with these different nations, especially here in America, man. We're not going to have any rest. It says, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. You know, again, man, because we're dealing with a lot, man. We're still dealing with, you know, trauma from slavery, you know. And again, these people are telling us to get over it, but you know how? You know, look at what you have done to us. And this is just one of the many atrocities that the nation of Edom has committed against the nation of Israel, you know. So this is the book of, well, Slakia. This is verse 66. It says, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and thou shalt have no assurance of thy life. So right, man, again, we don't know whether we're going to live or we're going to die, you know, here in America, especially those of our people that are lost now. Those of us that are of the hopefully elect, we know, you know, that some of us are going to be martyrs, you know. But just like it says in the scriptures, there be some among you that shall not taste death, you know. So there's also men among us that aren't going to die, you know. They're going to make it all the way up until our Lord Yahweh Shai returns to beam them up, you know. But when we were lost, you know, we had no assurance for our lives. We didn't know whether we're going to live or we're going to die, you know. Excuse me, Slakia. And this is one of the many curses that we suffer from, man. This is why, you know, a lot of our people are on edge, man, because we just don't know. The Lord can take us out at any moment, you know. So I'm just going to grab a couple more. I'm going to get the book of Amos chapter 7 and verse 17. And it says, Therefore thus saith the Lord, Thy wife shall be an harlot in the street, and thy sons and thy daughters shall fall by the sword, and thy land shall be divided by a line, and thou shalt die in a polluted land, and Israel shall surely go into captivity forth of his land. And the point I want to get in this verse is that thy sons and thy daughters shall fall by the sword. And we're seeing that, our people are out here getting slain, by the sword, the modern day sword being a gun, and it's not just limited to the gun. He has his bio warfare, his chemical warfare, these GMO foods, these all contribute to Esau's, sword, his weaponry, but as it says, he dropped 2 C4 charges on those homes and burned 61 houses, 2 city blocks. They allowed that fire to spread, leaving 250 people homeless, leaving 11 people dead, 6 adults and 5 children, So again, our children shall die in the street by the sword, man. Again, this is just one of the many curses that we're suffering from, But Esau, he's going to pay for the damage that he has done, And yeah, I'll just end it with this because I wrote this one down, but I'll still read it. This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 23. It says, How was the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? So right, who's the hammer of the earth? Esau, and again, he's going to be cut asunder, meaning he's going to be taken out of power, and Babylon, aka America, is going to become a desolation, it's going to be destroyed. These other nations that, make their money off of America, pursuant to Revelation, the 18th chapter, it gives you a vivid description of how they're going to mourn because they're not going to be able to make any money, off of America because America is the biggest consumer nation in the world, So when that time comes, Esau, Edom, is going to be taken out of power and he's going to be brought extremely low, So I just wanted to go into that. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the artists of great millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till the next time I say Shalom.